Mama's passbook was at the bottom of the shoebox. Melissa had been meaning to go through that box for 2 years, ever since she'd packed it up from her mother's house the week after the funeral. She'd finally opened it that Sunday afternoon, sitting on the edge of the bed in the back bedroom with the afternoon light coming through the blinds in thin strips. Under the prayer cards from 3 different funerals, the rubber-banded stack of old grocery store receipts her mother had kept for reasons nobody could explain, and a small envelope with her mother's handwriting on the front. There it was, a tan bank passbook from the 80s, the kind that banks don't issue anymore, the kind that fit in a shirt pocket. She turned to the last page. December 1994. Savings, $847. Her mother had closed the account and kept the book for 20 years after. Melissa set it on the kitchen table, opened her own spiral notebook to the March page. She'd written it in ballpoint pen, in her careful handwriting, $6,215. She sat there for a moment, just sat there with those 2 things on the same table. Then she got up and put the kettle on. Melissa Harris was 55 years old and had worked as a receptionist at a dental practice on East Jefferson in the East Side neighborhood of Detroit, Michigan. She got there at 8 and rarely left before 6. More often than not, she stayed later because someone had called in or because the last appointment had run long and the notes still had to be filed. The drive home on the Lodge Freeway, which should have taken 20 minutes, took 40 on a good day and 55 on a bad one. Dinner was whatever she could pull together after she got in. She and Terrence had been together 31 years and married 29 of them, in a ceremony at her aunt's house that nobody had dressed up particularly for, and that had been fine. He drove a city bus on the West Side routes, came home at around the same time she did, and was a decent man in the way that mattered, which is to say he didn't cause drama and he showed up when it counted. But money had always been something they didn't have quite enough of. Their checking account usually had enough in it for the week, but not much more. By the last few days of any given month, it was thin enough that she didn't like to check the balance. The overdraft protection got used every December, every March when the car tags came due, every summer when something at the house broke in a way that couldn't be waited on. The reasons changed year to year. The result stayed the same. Melissa had this life and she didn't spend much time complaining about it. Complaining didn't produce anything she didn't already know, and she'd worked alongside women who were doing 2 jobs just to stay where she was. She wasn't going to pretend it was harder than it was for people who had it harder. What she couldn't make her peace with was the simple question of why. She worked steady hours. They weren't extravagant people. They didn't take vacations to speak of, didn't go to restaurants regularly, didn't buy things they didn't need most of the time. So why, after all those years, did every year end the same way it had started? Nothing put away, nothing building. Just the same thin account, same overdraft, same feeling of standing exactly where she'd stood 12 months before. She hadn't had a name for that yet. For 25 years, Melissa had gone to the bank the way she went to the emergency room, only when she had no choice. She'd walk in through the heavy glass door with her stomach already tightened, take a paper number from the machine near the entrance, and sit down in one of those plastic chairs with her purse in her lap. When they called her number, she'd stand up quick, like she was worried she'd miss it. The teller or the banker would be looking at their screen while she talked, typing while she explained herself, asking her to sign here and initial there. She'd sign where they pointed and say thank you when she stood up, and the thank you wasn't really gratitude. It was just the signal that it was over and she could go. 2 years before, there'd been a charge on her statement she didn't recognize. She went in, waited 30 minutes past her number, and ended up sitting across from a branch manager she'd never seen. He explained it in under 2 minutes. A maintenance fee from an account package change they'd sent notice of in January. She'd either not received the letter or not understood it, or set it down and forgotten where. He reversed the charge, had her sign a form. She thanked him and left. On the sidewalk, she stopped for a moment in the sun. She had the feeling of having left with something less than she'd gone in with, and it wasn't the money. It was something else that she couldn't name on the sidewalk in front of that branch, and still couldn't name that evening or the evening after. It was always like that at the bank. Then in July, the bank cut her credit line without telling her first. She found out on a Friday night when she tried to pay the light bill through the app on her phone. It declined. She tried again. Declined again. She called customer service. The automated system told her she'd been moved to a lower credit line due to payment history, that she currently owed $3,800 between her overdraft balance and her card. $3,800. She stood in the kitchen holding her phone after the call ended, not quite knowing where to look or what to do with her hands. That Monday, she left work a little early and drove to the branch to see what could be done about her account. The line was long. It was 4 in the afternoon on a Monday in July, and the air conditioning inside was blowing too cold for the season, that institutional cold that hits the back of your neck when you walk in from the heat. Melissa took a number, 89. They were on 71. She sat down in a plastic chair near the far wall and crossed her arms against the air conditioning. The chairs were arranged in rows facing the teller windows. To her left, the numbered display board. To her right, through a low partition she'd never paid much attention to, a row of offices with glass walls. Next to her sat a woman, maybe mid-50s, give or take. Natural grey hair, cut close to her head. Plain clothes. She didn't have her phone out. She was sitting with her hands folded in her lap, watching the number board. Nothing in her posture that said impatient, nothing that said anxious. She was just sitting and watching, the way someone sits when they have exactly what they need for the moment. Melissa thought that was unusual. Everybody looked at their phone while they waited. From across the bank, louder than it needed to be for the distance, came a voice from one of the glassed-in offices in the corner. A banker was sitting across from a man in a jacket and tie, both of them with coffee cups in front of them on the small table. The banker was using the man's first name, smiling, at ease. There was a different quality to that conversation than the ones happening at the teller windows. What caught Melissa's eye was that the man in the jacket hadn't taken a number. He'd come through the door on the far side of the low partition, the side she'd never tried, been greeted by name by someone near the entrance, and been walked straight back without breaking stride. The grey-haired woman looked toward that corner office for a moment, then looked back at the number board. Melissa looked too. The low partition had no signs, nothing that explained the two sides. The woman spoke quietly, without turning her head toward Melissa. Bank's got a back room for people who don't have to wait in line. Melissa didn't say anything. The woman kept going, still watching the board. They don't tell you about it, but there's a type of account they only offer once you've already got enough that you don't need it the same way. Most people who sit in these chairs are never going to hear about it. Number 72 was called. The woman picked up her purse without hurrying and walked toward the teller window. Melissa sat still. Those two sentences hadn't landed on her like advice, hadn't landed like complaint. They'd landed the way someone talks to themselves out loud about something that's just true, but that nobody bothers to say. If you've read this far, you already know that what that woman said didn't leave Melissa when she walked out of that bank. Some things don't land and scatter. Some things land and stay put. Stay with me until the end. The following week, on her lunch break, sitting in the narrow back hallway of the dental practice where the phone reception was better, Melissa started looking things up on her phone. She kept her voice low while she read through results, the way you do when you're working on something you're not ready to share yet. Checking account, premium checking, minimum balance, fee waivers, preferred banking, account tiers, What the grey-haired woman had said was accurate. There was a type of account the bank didn't advertise to customers with low balances, reduced monthly fees, certain service charges waived, better rates on deposits. To qualify, you needed to maintain a minimum daily balance of $1,500 for 6 consecutive months. $1,500. She did the math in her notebook. If she put aside $250 a month, she'd have $1,500 in 6 months. $250 a month, about 18% of what she took home after taxes and insurance. A stretch, but not impossible if she actually meant to do it. She cancelled the streaming bundle she'd been paying for and barely used. She stopped the Friday night food delivery that had become a habit without her consciously deciding it. Started bringing lunch every day, even Fridays, even when the day had been the kind that made you want to sit in your car and not move for 20 minutes. In August, she put aside $260. In September, $290. She kept it in plain envelopes inside the old Bible her mother had given her, on the shelf in the back bedroom closet. Terrence never opened that Bible. It was hers in that way, that some things in a house are understood to belong to one person. By October, she had $810 in that Bible. She didn't tell Terrence, not to keep a secret. There was something she felt but couldn't name yet, that if she mentioned it before she got somewhere concrete, something was going to find a reason to interrupt it. The back room had always been there. She just wasn't the kind of customer they walked straight through. Nobody ever told her she could be. One Thursday afternoon, she stopped at the bakery on East Warren, the one she drove past every day, and had been driving past for years. She got herself one of the coconut layer slices from the display case that she'd looked at many times and never bought. She ate it in the car in the lot before she pulled out. It cost $3.80, and it was worth every penny of it. She drove home with a quiet satisfaction that didn't need anyone to explain it to her. 3 weeks later, Terrence came home saying he'd seen a 60-inch television on sale at the electronics store on 8 Mile. His old one was starting to go. Said they could put it on the card and pay it down over a few months. Melissa said she'd rather not do that. He said it wasn't a big deal, just a few $100s. She went to the bedroom, came back with the Bible, counted the money from the envelopes onto the kitchen table, $810. Terrence looked at the money. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said it didn't make much financial sense to keep cash sitting like that when they still carried a balance on the card. That savings accounts weren't earning anything worth counting these days. That the money was just sitting there losing value. She didn't respond. That night after he fell asleep, she lay on her back looking at the ceiling. The window fan was going in the corner. A car passed slowly outside. She thought about the grey-haired woman at the bank, the quiet, even voice, the way she'd been watching the number board, not her phone. They don't tell you about it. She waited until she was sure Terrence was out. Then she got up, went to the closet, took down the Bible, counted the money again. Not because she didn't know the total, just to hold it in her hands for a minute, $810. She put it back, went back to bed. The next morning, she looked up televisions at the store's website before she left for work. Found a 40-inch on clearance for $230, called Terrence at noon. He said that was fine. The television came home that afternoon. They paid cash from the envelope. The difference between putting a 60-inch on credit and paying $230 cash for a smaller one. She saved herself 14 months of interest payments. And she had $580 left, which went straight back into the Bible. She wrote it in her notebook, not the purchase, what she'd chosen not to spend, and she understood something that 25 years of work had never taught her. Putting money aside wasn't the hard part. The hard part was not touching what was already set aside when a reason came along that seemed reasonable enough. and there was always a reason that seemed reasonable enough. She started writing down not just what she saved, but every decision that went differently than it would have gone before. The drive-through lane she didn't pull into, the online cart she closed without checking out, the thing she picked up in the store and set back down. It wasn't sacrifice, it was attention, and attention written down becomes a habit faster than attention you leave in your head. Mama's passbook stayed on the kitchen table for several days around this time. Her mother had held on to $847 on a working woman's wages in December of 1994. Kept the book for 20 more years after the account closed. Maybe she knew she'd need to show somebody something someday. Melissa's notebook sat beside it. Same table. Different story starting from the same place. 18 months after that Monday afternoon in the bank, Melissa Harris had $6,215 in an account that she'd never been offered before, and that most people who'd stood in that same line didn't know was available to them. The branch banker who opened it was a young man she hadn't met before. He asked, almost as an aside, why she'd waited this long to request this type of account. She said she hadn't known it existed. He said it was available to all qualifying customers who maintained the minimum balance. She didn't say what she was thinking. On a Saturday morning, she drove to the grocery store on Mack Avenue with her canvas bags. The bank's ATM was on the corner of the same block, right where she always saw it, but had never gone in just to check her balance. She went in that morning. She wasn't taking anything out. She just wanted to see the number. She stood at the machine and waited for it to load. $6,215. She stood there with the receipt in her hand. The paper was still warm. Morning light came through the glass of the vestibule. She thought about the grey-haired woman, the calm, flat voice, the eyes that stayed on the number board. Bank's got a back room for people who don't have to wait in line. She folded the receipt, opened her purse, took out Mama's old passbook, which she'd started carrying with her again a few weeks ago for a reason she hadn't tried to explain to herself. She opened it to the last page, slid the receipt in behind the last entry, right behind the December 1994 line. Closed the book, put it back. When she came out of the vestibule, a woman was standing just inside the bank lobby, looking at the posted list of account types on the wall near the entrance. 50 or so, work shoes, car keys in her hand, the look on her face that Melissa knew, reading something official and not quite seeing how any of it applied to her. Melissa stopped, went back through the door. She stood beside the woman and said low and even, not making a production of it, "There's a type of account they don't advertise to everybody. It's the kind they use to walk people straight back to. You can qualify if you maintain $1,500 for 6 months. It's worth asking about when you go to the window. Ask specifically about preferred banking. Don't let them not mention it." The woman looked at her. Melissa nodded and left. She walked back out into the morning light and got in her car and sat there for a minute before she started the engine. She thought about the grey-haired woman at the bank on that Monday in July. The way she'd spoken without preamble, without expecting anything back. The 2 sentences that hadn't felt like information when they landed, but turned out to be exactly that. What gets passed on in those plastic chairs doesn't always come in an announcement. Sometimes it comes in a few words from someone who figured something out and doesn't see any reason to keep it to herself. That's how knowledge travels when the people who are supposed to teach it have no interest in doing so. If you stayed until the end, you already know something about Melissa. Maybe not her bank or her line or her mama's passbook, but you know that feeling of sitting in a plastic chair, not quite knowing that what you need exists, that it's right there on the other side of a partition with no sign explaining it, and that nobody thought it was their job to tell you it was for you too. But it was. It always was. She'd spent 25 years believing that the good accounts, the better terms, the real tools, those were for people who already had money. Turns out they were available to people who showed the bank they were building some. A different kind of question asked at the right window. Day one isn't when the money is already there. Day one is when you stop assuming the back room isn't for you. It can be today. Subscribe and hit the bell. There's a new story here every week, made for women like you and like Melissa. If this one stayed with you, a like is the simplest way to help it reach someone else who's been sitting in those plastic chairs. Thank you for staying until the end.